Chargers. Touchdown, UCLA.
With USC great and NFL stud, Frostee Rucker.
The Trojans back in front.
And LAFB founder Ryan Dyrud on the Believe Podcast Network and LAFBnetwork.com. This is your destination for Los Angeles football.
What is up, Los Angeles, and welcome into the LA Football Podcast here on the Believe Podcast Network, always on the LA Football Network, LAFBnetwork.com, your destination for all your favorite Los Angeles football teams. We are mere hours away from training camp finally kicking off for both the Chargers and the Rams. Football is back finally. I feel like the offseason, didn't fully ever start just because, we have the free agency, we have draft, we have mini camp, we have OTAs, but there was a good solid month of June and most of July with really nothing going on and us just scrambling to create content. So it's good to finally have training camp here. We're going to get into it. I'm going to be joined by the great Talon Graff, the coach, newly married. But first, real quick, show is brought to you by betonline.ag. Always, we just released the odds for MVP for the NFL season. Patrick Mahomes, of course, leading all candidates as the favorite. Aaron Rodgers was fourth, but now with today's news of him actually coming to terms with the Packers and returning to camp to play, I'm assuming those odds will change quickly. Matt Stafford also in there for the Rams, rounding out the top four. BetOnline.ag, head their mobile or desktop, get a 50% welcome bonus when you sign up. But to talk today with me, the newly freshly married man, I want to see that ring joining me on the LA Football Podcast, the coach. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Doing well, my friend. I love the Chris Collinsworth slide in. I love that. It's not really a slide in, but all good. I love it. No, good to see you, my man. Great
seeing you. Did you ever see there's a video that people have done like memes for so many times, but the actual video is like a packed bar. And so there's like a giant big screen and they're watching something and all of a sudden everyone just goes nuts and throwing beer. And I think the actual video is probably like a soccer game or a football game, if you will. But I saw a meme of someone did the Chris Collinsworth slide in. Did you see that?
Dude, that was one of the best videos I've ever seen. It's one of my favorite videos of all time. It's hilarious.
So the first time I saw the meme was this video. So I actually thought when I first saw it, obviously then I think I came to more realization that, okay, it was a joke. But the first time I saw it was that Chris Collinsworth slide. And so I was like, holy shit, this is like the greatest video I've ever seen of this bar going nuts for the slide. And then I realized, okay, it was actually just like a meme put over that, but it's still fantastic.
Oh, so good. So good. Whoever came up with that is a genius.
Yeah, fantastic. So, but yeah, we're going to talk Rams and Chargers training camp. Finally, the only thing I haven't covered, I feel like, because we've been talking training camp expectations for like a month and a half. But we're going to talk a little undrafted free agents for both the Rams and Chargers that we think have a realistic shot of making the squad. And then we're going to get into a little college ball, trying to hit these teams on every show, UCLA and USC. But we'll talk more about this new news of Oklahoma and Texas leaving the Big 12 for the SEC. We'll get our thoughts on that. And then we're going to talk about if the Pac12 were to either take away a couple teams or ask some teams to join the conference, who we would like to see. So we'll get into that in just a minute. But first, Coach, come on, we got some big life news. You're a married man now. Just, what are we, two weeks into it, I think? You're back from your honeymoon.
So, yeah.
First of all, congratulations. It was an absolutely beautiful wedding. We had a great time celebrating with you and your wife, Jacqueline, and super happy for you. But how you feeling? How does it feel to be a married man?
Dude, honestly, it feels great. We've been together so long, it just kind of feels like it was just a smooth transition. Obviously, it's legal and official now, so there's mentally, it is a little bit different, but it's it's easier. It's almost safer now because it's like, now I can say, oh, here's my wife, Jacqueline, or it just sounds so much better than it's my girlfriend, Jacqueline. I love it, man. So far, so good. I know we just essentially all we've done has been on the honeymoon. So, I'm sure there'll be rough patches.
Yeah, but you've been through most of them. Like you said, you've been together so long, easy transition. But it's to make it a sports term, since this is a sports podcast, it's kind of like when you're not even a free agent, but you're on like a contract year And like, so you're with the team. Maybe you've been with the team for 5 years and now you're on your contract year and you get that extension. You're locked in. There's just that relief. You're like, all right, I'm locked in. I'm with my wife, with my team.
All the distractions are gone. You can just focus on doing what you need to do to get better. Exactly.
Get the dishes done, get the dry rib on the ribs, get the smoker going on time. If I need a vacuum, I do that. Yeah, it's all easy now.
Right? Exactly. No distractions.
Well, good, brother. Well, we are pumped for you guys. Welcome to the club. It's a good club to be in. Now we just need a baby Graff running around here soon.
Right. I mean, they're in the it's in the plans. Who knows when it'll happen or if it'll happen, but that's the plan.
Yeah, hey, practice makes perfect. So
that's what I keep saying.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you've been practicing probably for a long time. So anyway, congrats, dude. Happy for you. But let's get into some training camp talk. What do you want to start with, the Rams or the Chargers?
Let's do the Rams. I don't know why, but I feel like I see your Rams helmet right behind you. I know you got Chargers right next to you, but I can see the Rams clearly. So that's there we go.
Okay. I need to change the mirror. I don't like the mirror mode I need it to go my direction. But anyway,
right.
Yeah. So we got both there. But yes, let's start with the Rammies. Okay. So for those that don't know, the Rams undrafted free agents this year. I'll just list them off quickly, and then the coach and I will go about. We'll tick 4 or so who we think have a realistic shot of making the squad. Because it seems like every year, some teams are different, but every year, usually at least one undrafted guy makes a team, or I should say for each team. For the most part, some teams don't, but I would say give or take, there's about 30 to 32 guys that do make the squads every year. So there's a realistic shot that one of these guys will make it. So for the Rams, you have, I'm just going to list these quickly. Wide receiver, Landon Akers from Iowa State. Tackle, Elric Jackson from Iowa. Safety, Paris Ford, Pittsburgh. Safety, Javon Grant, Merrimack College. Safety, Troy Warner, BYU. They went safety heavy in this class. Receiver, Jeremiah Hadel, Texas State. Offensive lineman, Jordan Meredith, Western Kentucky, versatile guy. You got outside linebacker, Max Roberts from Boston College. Defensive tackle, George Silvanik from Air Force. And defensive back, Bronte Harris, UAB. So, off the top, Coach, I'll just let you kind of start how you want to start. Are there any of those guys that kind of jump out at you, say, wow, I'm pumped about this guy? Or do you want to just jump into, here's a guy I think that has a realistic shot. We'll just go back and forth, list one by one, and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the guys that I really love is Elric Jackson. And this was a guy that I think had he come out a year earlier, probably would have been drafted. He was high on a lot of people's boards. It was the same year Wirtz was coming out, and they were considered a really tough tandem and a really good tandem. So why he decided to go back, I'm not even 100% sure. Maybe I don't know. Maybe he didn't get the grade he wanted. Maybe he was just higher on my list than others. But I really do like Elric Jackson. I think this is a guy that realistically might make the team as a depth piece. And if he doesn't, he's a practice squad type of player who you could develop. And eventually, if you can move him inside, he might be better fit at guard. But he's got the size to maybe play right tackle, but maybe just not the skill set. But I do like him as an offensive line prospect for this team.
I love Elric Jackson. He's one of my 4 that I think can not only I think will make the team. First of all, I think the Rams, by not drafting an offensive lineman, their depth, I know they had 10 offensive linemen on the depth chart last year, but it's whittled down a little bit with, losing Austin Blythe, the free agency. Andrew Whitworth has basically come out and said this is probably his last season. Real quick, got to give a shout out to Big Wit with the shirt that we actually created with him. So, shameless plug right there.
That looks good, by the way. I do like that. I've seen that floating around social media.
Head to LAFB locker room to pick one up today. But yeah, he'll be retiring. So, you're losing some depth pieces there. So they didn't draft one this year. I would assume next year they'll probably draft heavy on offensive line again. So they obviously feel confident about the group they have. But Elric Jackson is a very, very good developmental guy who's going to add depth. You mentioned it, was the other bookend to Tristan Wirfs last year, who had one of the best rookie tackle seasons. The last year's tackle class was unbelievable. The 4 guys taken in the first round, and Tristan Wirfs kind of headlined that on the Super Bowl champion Buccaneers. But Elric Jackson on the field was very good. Finished with a 74.4 rating from PFF. Even last year, which you said, as you were correct, was kind of a down year a little bit for him from his junior season or from his season before that, but was still projected to go in the 6th or 7th round. So the fact that he slipped out of the draft, fell into the Rams' hand after starting 42 games at a school in Iowa that is a great, great offensive line school, I think he, in my opinion, I think he's a lock to make this team. I think he's a lock just because of the depth they have and the skill set he brings. And maybe, he's not going to obviously start or play right away, but a guy that can slide into that whether they want to re-sign Joseph Noteboom, whether they feel Bobby Evans is going to be the tackle to take over for Andrew Whitworth or whatnot, or Rob Havenstein's contract is coming to an end. Elric Jackson's a guy they can certainly plan for 2-3 years down the line. And I think if they weren't to waive him, he would not make it through waivers for them to get the practice squad. So he's a guy I think they have to keep on the main roster if they want to keep him, because I just think he'll get picked up by someone because of what he did at Iowa. Like I said, 42 starts. It's pretty impressive at the offensive tackle position.
Yeah. If for any reason they don't want to keep him around and they do test the waiver and hopefully he clears, I agree with you. I do think someone is going to snatch him up just on potential alone, because this guy is a guy that's going to be – he makes a team better. He's that good of a football player.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think in my opinion, I think he's a lock. So that was definitely one of my 4. So Coach, I copied you, but back to you. Who's another one of these 10 guys that can make the squad?
You mentioned the safety heaviness of it, but man, I love Paris Ford. This is another guy that I'm really surprised didn't get drafted. He was such a hot name in college football. A lot of people had him as, maybe not the top safety, but a top safety in college football. For him to not get drafted, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if there's injury concerns. I'm not really, keen on the whole Paris Ford picture, but I do know as a football player on the field, this guy's a thumper. He's a hard hitter. He's a tackling machine. So I don't know if he's going to find a niche on special teams. I don't know if he's going to find a niche rotating in with the defensive back group. I don't think he's got the skill set to kind of move around as a corner or a nickel. I think he's a true, box safety type of player. So his versatility isn't necessarily enough to keep him around, but I think he's skillful enough as a football player to keep him on the roster. So this is a guy that I wouldn't be surprised at all to see make the 53-man.
Yeah, Troy Ford, you mentioned, is great all over the place. Not Troy Ford, excuse me, Paris Ford. Troy Warner is who I'm going to talk about next, but Paris Ford, I think what one of his drawbacks was, and this is, I think, very coachable. So this is something that he could absolutely get over and make the team, but he's so aggressive in his play sometimes. I think he had 5 interceptions or something as a safety at Pittsburgh. Sometimes he's so aggressive trying to make a big play that he overcommits and gives up big plays. So I feel like that was maybe one of the knocks on him, but to me, that's extremely coachable. It's also maybe a guy that maybe didn't trust his teammates, whereas when you're in the NFL, you're playing with the best of the best. So you trust your teammates more to make a play also. Certainly has the opportunity to make this roster. But if we're looking at safeties, taking 3 safeties as undrafted guys, I only see one of them making it just because they're already pretty deep at safety. Even with the loss of John Johnson, they still have 3 very, very good safeties, plus Nick Scott, who is a great special team guy who I think makes the roster regardless just because of his special teams prowess, who coach we actually had on the show, 2-3 years ago when he was coming in as a rookie?
God, it probably was that long ago, but yeah.
That's great.
That was a good conversation. I like talking to him.
Nick was great. Yeah. At a Penn State.
Forrest Gump fan. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Great memory. Look at you. Great memory. But yeah, Nick Scott, who's just been a phenomenal special teamer and did get some playing time at safety last year. But when you have, Terrell Burgess and Jordan Fuller and Taylor Rapp as your 3, incumbents, it's going to be hard to take more than one safety out of this list. So I'm actually going to go with Troy Warner. I just think the talent level is there. Obviously, it has to be mentioned. He's the brother of Fred Warner, who's now the highest paid linebacker in the NFL, played for the rival 49ers. So obviously you want that pedigree in the family. But the dude is special. The problem is his injury history. He played 5 years at BYU just because he could never stay healthy. You wanted to see him make that jump, make it into the draft conversation, but then he get hurt again. So absolutely a level of concern for injuries. And I know the Rams have taken their chances on a few of those guys, Terrell Lewis being one of them out of Alabama last year, who again got hurt in his rookie season. But I think when you're looking at a guy that you're bringing in as an undrafted guy that is coming in for depth originally, you might take a risk on his injury history when you're looking at the talent that he can bring to the field. So he's a guy that I see them maybe take that risk for, but it would not any of those 3 safeties. Honestly, even Javon Grant was the 3rd one. I think one of them will make it just to add to that room because they're all super talented, super skilled players. They all are a little different in what they do. I think Paris Ford and Javon Grant are almost like opposite in what they do. And then Troy Warner is kind of a blend of both of them. Yeah. So I just think Troy Warner, based on not based on his name, but based on what the talent level is, it's just what if they're willing to look past the injury history, which is a lot.
Right. Yeah, that's a big deal nowadays, especially the can you stay on the field?
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that. That's a sneaky good pick. It's fun to have a little sibling rivalry within the division.
Oh yeah. If he can make the squad and then actually get some playing time, and obviously they both play defense, they never actually play against each other, but they'll still see each other twice a year, and could be fun. Yeah,
100%, man. I love that. So I'm going to go with.
Do you think before we move on, do you think Fred Warner was worth the highest paid linebacker in football?
I mean, the dude's a good football player, and I think a guy like that, the last thing you want is to see him play for another team. So, yeah, I mean, I think he was worth whatever they needed to keep him around. So, yeah, I think it's worth it.
Yep, you said it. That's the NFL nowadays. It's like even if you're not worth that contract, it's worth it to not lose you. So you do what you got to do to keep the guy around. But he is a top, for sure, a top 5 backer. So
yeah, if they didn't give it to him, someone would have.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
So I'm going to go. I'm going to stay on the offensive line and go with Jordan Meredith out of Western Kentucky. This dude has so much experience along the offensive line. He's a thick guy. He's like the prototypical size for a road blocking mauler guard, which I just fall in love with those guys. I love to see a guard that can just pave the way for an RB to go get 10, 15 yards. But yeah, I mean, I like me some Jordan Meredith. 3-year starter at Western Kentucky last 3 years, and in his freshman year he saw a lot of playing time. I think he only missed action in 1 game, so that's 4 years, and he only didn't play in 1 game. That's a lot of experience. That's a lot of reps. And granted, Western Kentucky didn't play. They're not P5 or anything, but they've produced some good talents. They've produced some good running backs. Even they've produced skill players, but their offensive line ranked like top 20, I think, in college football last year. And they were one of the top units around. Jordan Meredith, was a really big part of that. And with we were talking about the tackle situation earlier, but I think the interior offensive line is really the biggest weakness of this Rams team. And I think Jordan Meredith could help out and at the very least be a depth player for them for years to come.
100%. I feel like when we do these lists or whatever, we try to be different, get some different perspective, but I got to agree with you. Jordan Meredith, I absolutely love. And I think if Elric Jackson is a lock, and like I said, to make it, Jordan Meredith is pretty damn close to whatever would be next in line to a lock. First of all, Austin Corbett's a free agent next season. So obviously, if he plays very well, they're going to want to extend him, but you want to have someone on the back end if that doesn't come to fruition, like we saw this year with Austin Blythe. And we've seen in years past with John Sullivan moving on or retiring, or basically just not resigning. I guess they kind of forced his retirement. But yeah, I mean, you said everything. Meredith, started pretty much every game for 3 seasons, so very durable. He was actually named an honorable mention All-American by Pro Football Focus. Ranking 5th among all FBS guards. He had like an 89.3 pass blocking grade, a 79.2 run blocking grade. So very efficient, very good in that realm. Obviously not playing the highest level of competition, but what the level of competition he did play, he was very good at it. So he's a guy that I think can come in, and if you're looking at Austin Corbett, Brian Allen, and Coleman Shelton as your 3 centers / guards right now, he's a guy that can come in and compete with those guys. And then hopefully they can keep on the practice squad. A guy, he has a much better chance to make it through waivers than Elric Jackson does for sure, but they'll definitely want to keep him around because like I said, if Austin Corbett is hitting free agency next season and he's a guy that can develop for an entire season, he's a guy that they might want to keep around for a long time. So durability is so big with offensive line play, durability and versatility, like you mentioned, and he has both those traits in spades. So definitely a great addition in free agency, undrafted free agency, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, 100%, dude. I love it. Looking forward to dude, honestly, this whole class the undrafted class is good. Like a lot of these guys are going to land on other teams when the Rams kind of lose. Yeah,
when you really look into it, yeah, I mean, we have each one more, so I don't want to say anyone else till you say it, but every guy is solid. And that's the case. We've talked about this before, Coach. When you make it to the NFL level, there's superstars, there's stars, and then there's like budding stars. Like everyone's talented. Sometimes It just depends on opportunity and scheme fits. It's not like if you don't make a team and you get cut, oh, you're just not good enough. Sometimes it's just either the position was too deep, either the coach liked someone else better. Maybe they liked someone else better off the field. I mean, we've talked to players. It was like, hey, I killed it in the camp. Everyone was saying how good I was doing, and they went with a guy who was doing worse than me, but the coach, knew his sister's family or something. Like, politics happen in that regard. When you make it to that level, to the NFL level, and you're one of the 90-man rosters at the start of camp, or is it still 90 now, or do they trim it down to begin with? I don't know. Everything changes.
That's a good question. Yeah, it's hard to keep up with all that.
I think it still starts at 90. It just trims down quicker. There's not like they used to like scatter it, and now it's like from 90 to like 60, like within a week. But when you're on those 90-man rosters to start the season, start training camp, every one of those guys can ball. Every one of those guys can play. It's just, sometimes scheme fits work better. And that's why you see guys like Phillip Lindsay go undrafted, end up being a Pro Bowler as a rookie. And you see, Cooper Kupp drafted in the mid rounds and being a Pro Bowler and one of the best receivers in the game. And Adam Thielen he went undrafted, didn't he? And he was one of the best receivers in the game. So we'll get to more of that. But anyway, I just want to make that to be said that all these guys are talented, all very good. It's just a matter of if they fit the right scheme. And I think the Rams did a very good job, and their 10 they selected, that all of them are going to compete for a spot because they all fit in what they want to do. So with that being said, Coach, who's the last, in your opinion, the fourth out of these 10 has the best shot of making it?
So I know the Rams went heavy wide receiver in the draft. So for me to say a wide receiver is going to make the team as an undrafted free agent might sound a little crazy, but hear me out. I'm going to go Jeremiah Hadel from Texas State. And I think the reason he makes the team is his special teams contributions, man. The Rams have a glaring need in special teams, and I know they drafted oh my God, the speedster, Tutu Atwell.
Yep.
Who was probably going to be able to help out, but I know he's not available right now, or he's on the PUP list or something like that. But this guy, Jeremiah Hadel, he's a smaller guy, 6 foot, 170 pounds, but he is dangerous with the ball in his hands as a returner. And I think this is where he's going to carve out a role with the Rams as a punt returner, kick returner, specialist kind of guy. And maybe a little bit on the offense. I doubt it with Outwell in the mix. But yeah, if this guy can impress in special teams and take a few to the house during camp, I wouldn't be shocked to see him land on the roster.
So we did not talk before this list, but I'm 100% in agreement. I know they drafted 2 receivers in Ben Skrobernick and Tutu Atwell, but Tutu, a lot of people, because of his size and speed, have attributed him to be a special teams guy, but I don't think they see him as that. He wasn't that at Louisville, had 4 total combined returns between punt and kick returns. So he was not a return guy at all at Louisville. He was a true receiver. He's just smaller. Shout out small guys. Love it. Jeremiah Hadel is a true return guy. He was actually 3rd in the nation in combined kick return yards. So a guy that you want to see average 22.1 yards per return over his 4 seasons. Here's a line. We had a article Ryan Anderson wrote on some of the undrafted free agents here at the LA Football Network. I love this sentence he had here, this line. He doesn't have duster speed associated with firefly receivers, but he does have great vision that allows him to find seams and make defenders miss. So when you want a kick returner, you want a guy that, obviously you want break line speed, but you want a guy that can actually see holes. Like, not just, how many times we see these speed guys just run straight into people because they're just trying to use their speed that's all they're banking on. So you want a guy that has vision, that can see the seams, that can watch the kind of play develop. Because I played special teams. I can't remember if you did, Coach, or not. But I played special teams. A lot of a return game is patience. Like you want to just go and run, but you have to see kind of how the return unit is actually going to block for you, and then you find that seam and then you hit it. Jeremiah Hadel has that vision, has that seam awareness, and that's why I agree with you 100% that I think he makes this squad, because they just released Simba Webster, who got picked up by the 49ers, who is now so they don't have an incumbent return guy. And I think that's because they believe Jeremiah Hadel is that guy.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think honestly, maybe hot take, but he might be their starting punt returner, kick returner come week 1. I wouldn't shock me at all.
Not at all. Yeah, I don't think maybe it's a hot take because people don't know him, but seeing his production in college, and seeing what he can bring to the table. So yeah, we're in agreement there. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see it come to true because I think it is. We're calling it now. Jeremiah Hadel will be the starting return man for the Rams come week 1 against the Bears. Boom. Book it.
Exist. I love it.
Yeah, book it. Book it. All right. Well, there you go. There's our 4 for the Rams. Now let's jump to the Chargers. Like before, I will go ahead and list off the Chargers undrafted free agents. So we had defensive back Ben DeLuca. Sounds like a doctor for Grey's Anatomy, but it's not. He played college football at Charlotte. Defensive lineman Jared Goldwire from Louisville. Tackle Darius Harper, Cincinnati. Tight end Hunter Kampmoyer, Oregon. Kicker Alex Kessman from Pittsburgh. Long snapper Ryan Langham, Georgia Southern. Defensive line Forrest Merrill, Arkansas State. I practiced this one before, so we'll see if I can get it. Linebacker Amen Ogbongbemiga, Oklahoma State. Ogbongbemiga. I think I said that right.
You did wonderful, by the way. I'm very impressed with how you did that.
I practiced a bunch, and I still muffled it in the very first try, but I think I got it together. Tackle Kyle Spalding, San Diego State. And finally, wide receiver Eli Stove out of Auburn. So, Coach, out of that list, 4 players you think with the best shot at making this newly refined Los Angeles Chargers roster?
So this might be a little bit of a homer pick, but I'm going to go Foster Merrill, the defensive tackle out of Arkansas State. This is a kid that's from my home state of Missouri. He went to Willard High School, which is a Class 5 high school in southern Missouri. Just outside of Springfield is where they're located. And in Missouri, Class 6 is the biggest. So he came from a big high school. It's not like he's playing podunk farmtown high school football in Missouri. He's playing legit competition down there in Springfield. And then he came into Arkansas State. When you look at him on paper and his measurements, he does not seem like a guy that's going to see the field very often. And he gets a lot of knocks on that in stature and his length and his measurement and all that. But dude, his low center of gravity, his toughness, his grittiness, and I know all these are just, buzzwords and that everybody likes to use on these prospects. But man, I like Foster Merrill. I think this is a guy that might make the team. I think if he doesn't, he's definitely a guy that would probably be a practice squad type of player that maybe down the road is able to help you out more so on Sundays. But I like this kid as a defensive line prospect. Yeah, absolutely love it. Yeah, it's not a homer pick. That's okay. And Arkansas State's actually produced some pretty good defensive tackle play. Didn't your Denver Broncos draft one last year? Or was that? No, they did. Yeah, in the 4th round. So didn't see much playing time. More of a developmental guy, but a guy they're still super excited about. So yeah, I think he's certainly a guy that can make the squad. The biggest thing with the Chargers is their defensive line. They have a lot of depth, but it's really hard to tell what they believe in, like who they actually believe. Guy we met came to my apartment for the interview, Cortez Broughton out of Cincinnati, still in the squad. So obviously I will always root for that guy. The fact that we talked to his agent. Hey, we'd love to have Cortez on. He was a 7th round pick at the time. Love to have Cortez on the show. This is when me and you were just starting off. So we were like a pretty damn near new show. Yeah. And his agent, we were babies. yeah. We weren't what we are now. And his agent was like, okay, yeah, let me get you Tez's number. And he's down to come on for sure. And I'll put you in contact. Obviously, we're going off a tangent here, but that's okay. So we hit up Tez. I think you actually hit him up because I was at work or something. And then I remember I think you texted me at work like, hey, he's down to just like come to your apartment. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, he's going to be training in the morning and he has a friend that lives nearby. So he's down to just come record at the apartment. Like, okay. So he literally came to my apartment. We got donuts, orange juice, showed up at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. And we sat in my family room with Cortez Broughton and had a great interview, had a great time. I gotta be honest. That was one of the cooler moments of my entire life. Just sitting there. It's it was literally just sitting in a dorm room with college buddies. But it's every so often it's this dude, he's an NFL player. When he leaves tomorrow, when he goes to work, he's going to go strap on some pads and go hit some helmets. It's it was such a surreal moment. And forever will I be a Cortez Broughton fan. Forever. Yeah. It's just the coolest dude. And he was so, you would hope that a newly drafted player would be down to earth.
but he was that in spades. Super humble, super nice. Just like he was thanking us. Thanks for having me on. Like, loved it. And we're like, dude, thanks for coming and hanging out. Like,
right?
I'm like, you want a donut? Take the box. Do what you got to do. And then we saw him maybe we went to camp, credentialed a couple days and saw him, and he, came right up to us, like said what up, shook our hands, like. So anyway,
good dude.
Great dude. Yeah. If you guys are not, you listening out there, are not Cortez Broughton fans, I know he hasn't seen a ton of field action, but he's been on the team ever since he got drafted. He's a guy you should look into because he's an awesome dude. Awesome story from the University of Cincinnati. But yeah, I just say that all and that they do have good depth at defensive line, but I could absolutely see who you mentioned making the squad for sure. So I will start with, I'm going to go with the doctor, the surgeon, Ben DeLuca out of Charlotte. He's not actually a doctor, not actually a surgeon. Yeah. What's actually the guy's name? His last name is DeLuca on Grey's Anatomy, right?
Yeah. And I cannot think of his first name. My wife would probably know, but it might be Ben, actually. I don't think it is, but yeah. Ben
right?
DeLuca. That's a great name for any profession, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah. So Italian. Love it. So Italian. So, but the dude was a baller at Charlotte. First of all, I think the fact that the Chargers are not super deep at safety, obviously you have Derwin James, who can be one of the best safeties in the NFL, but you never know what you're going to get injury-wise. We pray to God he's going to be healthy this year because we want to see him in Brandon Staley's system truly wreak havoc. But then you have Alohi Gilman, which we really don't know what he's going to be. You have Nasir Adderley, who hasn't been bad, but it hasn't been great. Hasn't really lived up to that second round status, but is the incumbent starter alongside Derwin. And then you drafted Mark Webb in the 7th round out of Georgia. And that's basically your safety room. So I think based on depth alone, Ben DeLuca has a really, really good shot to make the squad. Now, I've said many, many times in Brandon Staley's system, you don't need a true safety by the terms that a lot of us as fans, a lot of the media defines them as, because he's going to use, basically he has corners and safeties and he defines them as defensive backs. They all play all over the field. So if you have 5 corners and only 3 safeties, in reality, you have 8 defensive backs that can kind of play everywhere. That's just Brandon Staley's system. That's why I've stressed many, many times that people should not be concerned about the safety room and the depth. But I still think it is good to have a guy like Ben DeLuca, who is the all-time leader in tackles, forced fumbles, and pass breakups at his college of Charlotte. A 4-year starter at strong safety would be the perfect player to fit in Staley's system. So I think what he brings, his talent level, is exactly what Staley's looking for. And to me, I know he's a little bigger, but he just has that perfect Darius Williams story almost. Darius Williams coming out of UAB, undrafted, getting cut by Baltimore, and then becoming a star in Brandon Staley's system with the Rams. And Ben DeLuca could be that exact same story with the Chargers and just becoming, a star just because of the talent we saw him display at a lesser level. But he displayed it in spades.
Yeah, I don't know too much about him. Other than he just had a kick-ass name, but no, I know he did big things at Charlotte, and the way he laid it out as how Staley likes to use his DBs, yeah, absolutely would make sense to keep Ben DeLuca around for a little bit.
Totally. So we'll see. And I think just on depth alone, it just makes sense. I know I do keep harping that don't pigeonhole guys as safeties and corners, because in the Staley system it doesn't work like that, but you still do want to have more than 3 or 4 safeties when you go into week 1, just because we know the Chargers injury history. So, Coach, all right, not number 2, but the second guy you think with the best shot to make it.
So here we go again. It's another year, and we're talking about the Chargers' offensive line woes, but I do think they finally got the left tackle that they've always been looking for in Rashawn Slater. So that I think they did a great job of getting him. And that was probably the steal of the draft. I know he was a high draft pick, but still probably a good steal. But I'm going to stick with the tackle position and go Darius Harper out of Cincinnati. I know we were just talking about Cortez Broughton. He's another Cincy guy. So Darius Harper is an athletic guy who started his college athletic career as a basketball player for the University of Miami of Ohio. And then he transferred over to Cincinnati, started playing football, and right off the bat saw playing time. So for him to be able to play basketball for 2 years and all of a sudden walk on the football field and he's one of the best guys out there already says a lot. And Cincinnati is a great program. They've been very successful the last few years. And, that they had a great offense in 2020 and Harper had a lot to do with that. They averaged like over 200 yards a game. They only allowed like 9 sacks. So the offensive line as a unit was very talented, and Darius Harper was a big part of that. And the athleticism, obviously, being able to play basketball for 2 years at a college level and then and play football as well. And I think that background and his tenacity and his grit and his experience playing for Cincinnati, I think will go a long way in helping him secure a spot on the 53-man roster. And I think the Chargers have been looking for offensive linemen for a long time. And I think Harper is one of those guys that might just stick around.
100% agree. He's one of my 4, I think, has the best shot to make it. This Chargers offensive line unit, obviously, we've talked all the time about how bad they were last year. And obviously they didn't bring basically anyone back but Brian Bulaga, Iowa. But they still need more depth pieces, guys to grow into it. When you look at tackles, you have Trey Pipkins, who was drafted as a developmental project. We haven't seen a ton of upside yet. I think they still do believe in him, but we need to see it. You have Storm Norton, the guy who, was great for the LA Wildcats in the XFL, Toledo product. But is he a guy you really feel confident going into the season if Bulaga or Rashawn Slater goes down? I think he's a great story. I think he has potential, but I don't think that's fans or the team would feel confident saying this is our guy right now. So they're definitely going to want to keep another tackle on the roster. I know they drafted Brendan Hymus also out of who I love that draft pick out of Nebraska, who is a very versatile offensive lineman who played tackle and inside a guard as well. So he has that option. But when you want a true tackle, Darius Harper at 6'7", over 300 pounds, was an honorable mention all ACC. Started all 10 games last year for the shortened season. You said all the intangibles. I think he's a great addition, and he would be, if he makes the roster, the first basketball player to make the roster since Antonio Gates, future Hall of Famer.
Do you see his son committed to Michigan State?
I did not. Gates' son?
Yeah, 4-star wide receiver. If that didn't make you feel old, then
wow,
I don't know what does. Yeah, Antonio Gates. I'm backtracking. I don't think he's Antonio Gates Jr. He might be, but anyway, 4-star receiver committed to Michigan State.
Wow, that does make you feel real old.
Right? Yeah, so you're welcome.
Thank you for that. But so he's not playing basketball though? He's just doing football?
As far as I know, he's all football, man.
Okay. Well, yeah, when your dad's a Hall of Famer in football, that's probably a good sport to stick to.
Right.
So, yeah. That's still one of the greatest stories. Played basketball at Kent State, walks onto the Chargers, and becomes a Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
get out of here.
Pretty rad.
Yeah, right. That's why I'm going to get hate for this, and I probably shouldn't even say it because it's not even has to do with anything with our podcast or our teams. But that's why, for some reason, I think Tim Tebow has a small chance to make it as a tight end with the Jaguars.
I'm not even gonna get started. That dude should not even make it through camp. I'm sorry, but come on.
Why not? Why not?
Because he's not a good football player.
No. He was not a good professional quarterback. He's a good football player, or he was. Obviously, it's been years.
I was going to say, he may have been at one point, but this is a little bit too late, in my opinion. I think this is a publicity stunt. I think this is to get fans in the door. I think he's a name that people know in Florida. He's tied to Urban Meyer. Yeah, 100%. Tim Tebow is not going to be a tight end for the Jacksonville Jaguars come week 1. I don't care. I'm putting money on it. That Tim Tebow will not be on the 53-man roster. That I was so irked when that happened, but I'm going down a rabbit hole here. But anyway,
that's fine. That's good. No, because we're not going to debate it long. We're going to move on. But I don't mind it. But yes, I agree. I agree with you 100%. It's a publicity stunt because his jersey sales are #1 in the NFL.
Right? Yeah, come on.
And he was a terrible quarterback and hasn't played it down in 5 years or whatever.
Baseball it's like I love. Okay, let me preface by saying this. I love Tim Tebow as a person. His off the field character is like everything is off the charts. Like this has nothing to do with him as a person. This has to do with him as a football player. That's where I have a problem with it. I think he's taken he's taken chances away from somebody who actually has a future in the sport, and Tim Tebow does not have a future on the field in the sport of football. Yeah. I'm sorry, but that bugs me. There's somebody somewhere that should be having that spot, and they're losing an opportunity because somebody wants to go play along with their former head coach. And I don't know. I don't like it. It rubs me the wrong way.
So I get that, 100% get that. But at the same time, it doesn't bother me and we'll move on quickly, but I want to say this. It doesn't bother me as much because to me that's life. That's business. That's how many people in our industry.
Mhm.
I never consider myself media, but we are quote unquote media, podcasting
Right.
this. How many retired athletes, retired anyone with a big name are honestly really bad at speaking sports, but they get the job because of the name, because it's a publicity stunt. ESPN's like, hey, this guy's going to bring in numbers. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. We have this kid who's been working his ass off for 15 years, working for free, working for small little newspapers, all this. But we're going to give it to the retired Hall of Famer who can't even say guys' names right, but he'll stand up there and he has a lot of Twitter followers in this. We see it in every industry. So to me, when I see it on the football field, it doesn't bother me because I'm like, that's life. Either go get yours, make it happen, be better than that, or it is what it is.
Yeah, and I can see that viewpoint too. I mean, it does happen everywhere. It's not like this is the first time it's ever happened, but yeah. I mean, but when it happens in our industry, I get just as upset. It just happens more often, I feel. So maybe we're just a little bit more numb to it, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just normal for us. Like, okay.
Right.
Oh, another athlete retires and gets a job right off the bat. Okay, great. I'll just keep doing this for free forever and, working 90 hours a week while you just show up to the booth for 3 hours and you're good. That's it. Get a paycheck.
I love it. I love talking to you so much.
Yeah. So anyway, okay, we'll move on from. I don't even know how Tim Tebow got in the conversation. I don't even know how did he get in the conversation somehow.
That's a really good question. My God, I don't remember.
I have no idea. Okay, are we on you? What do we even wrap up on? Are we on your second?
So we were just talking about somebody.
We were talking about a player.
We were talking about Darius Harper, I believe.
Okay. So we both agreed on Darius Harper. I
Yes.
went and agreed with you. So now you're on your third Chargers undrafted free agent.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go with the Oregon tight end Hunter Kampmeyer or Moore. Sorry.
Yep.
I know he wasn't like Jacob Breland was a stud at tight end for Oregon, and Kent Moore didn't really live up to the stat wise that Breland kind of set that bar for what Oregon tight ends could do in that offense. But Kent Moore is a little bit different of a player than Breland was, and Kent Moore is not as athletic. He's got good size. He's like 6'4", 250. So I think this is a guy that could maybe stick around because the tight end room for the Chargers is bare. They have Jared Cook, and I know they drafted Trey McKitty, which is another. Honestly, I think he's largely considered a project type of player too, even though they took him fairly early out of Georgia. Yeah. But I think Kent Moore, along with all those other guys that they have that they're trying, I feel like they're just throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and hoping something sticks. And Kent Moore might just stick. I don't know. He comes from a good system. He comes from a good program. He comes from a good coaching staff. So I think this is a guy that might find a niche. Is he going to be an Antonio Gates type of Hall of Fame career? No, but he could be a number 2 tight end that helps you win games.
Yep, 100%. He's the third on my list of most probable to make it. You mentioned it. The tight end position is very kind of questionable. Jared Cook's just on a 1-year contract. So, I mean, who knows if they even re-sign him for the next season. And then you have Donald Parham, the XFL product, and a few other guys. So, Steven Anderson, who's mostly an inline blocker, and Trey McKitty, who's much better blocker also, but they want to project to be a more a threat in the red zone and whatnot. So, it's not a horrible position group by any means, but it's definitely not one budding with talent. And so Kampmeyer had a great collegiate career at Oregon. He obviously has some history with Justin Herbert. And I think what I love about him is, I know they have a fullback on the roster, but he's a guy that could actually play in the backfield as a fullback as well and do some inline tight end work and split out as a receiver. So he has more versatility where they could kind of knock out 3 players in one, if you will, with what he's able to do, because he played a lot of quote unquote fullback in the backfield for Oregon, doing some blocking for some of the stuff they did there in that offense. So I think that alone gives him an upper edge. The fact that he can line up back there with Austin Eckler, whoever's going to do it, or be like in a Rhino package or whatnot. So yeah, I think he's also a very high possibility to make this roster from his tight end ability, but also his versatility in the blocking game to do things that other players may not be able to.
Yeah, I like that you brought up Eckler and that he's a polished blocker as well, because and some might scoff at this and say that's just trying to find a reason to keep him around. But I honestly, when you're blocking for guys like CJ Verdell and all those scat back type of players that they have up in Oregon, you get used to blocking for a certain type of runner, and Austin Eckler is exactly that type of runner. So if you know the tendencies of the guy behind you, it's going to make you a more efficient and more effective blocker in your scheme. So I think that's going to go a long way. In all honesty, I think that'll help him with the experience blocking for that type of offensive style and those runners behind him like Verdell. Eckler's the same way, and I think that's going to help him out.
Yep. 100% agree. So I think he's a very likely shot. So, okay, Coach, your last guy with the biggest potential to make the Chargers roster as an undrafted free agent.
So I'm not going to try to. I'm not going to try to say his name because I'll butcher it. So I'm just going to call him M-N-O. But I think Ammon's going to make.
We're going. We have the same list. We have the same list. Somehow.
Shocker.
Yeah.
But no, I like this kid as a linebacking prospect, and I know that they got to have Tranquil White and the other guy Murray, kind of penciled in, if you will, as those three guys. But behind them, it's kind of a wide open competition. I know they have Kyler Fackrell, but he's more of a pass rushing kind of guy. They drafted Nick Neiman out of Iowa, who's Ben Neiman's brother within the division for the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
But dude, I'm telling you that this Amen-O guy is a good football player, and he's I believe he's actually from Canada. But he played for Oklahoma State, and it's kind of funny that because he's from Canada, and then Chuba Hubbard's also from Canada. So I don't know if that's an Oklahoma State thing. They like to recruit guys from Canada. I don't know, but anyway, I think he's developed very nicely during his time at Oklahoma State. And I think that development's just going to continue. And I think had this kid had one more year in college football, I think he would have been drafted. I think he's just that good. I think he's on that sort of trajectory where he's gotten better and better and better every year. And there's no reason to think this guy's not going to impress the staff at the Chargers. And there's no reason to think he's not going to be on that 53-man.
So I am shocked that Amen Ogbong Bamiga, I'm going to say it one more time. Amen Ogbong Bamiga, Nigerian prospect from Alberta, Canada, Calgary, Canada, did not get drafted. This to me has the makings of the Corey Littleton story. And I know on this show, whether you're on it or not, Coach, I draw so many parallels between the Rams and Chargers, and obviously even more so now that Brandon Staley, former D coordinator for the Rams, is now the coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. But because there are just so many things to compare to. And Corey Littleton, this was before Brandon Staley's time, undrafted free agent out of Washington, similar size and build. Amen is 6'1", 235. Corey Littleton's right around that same build. They're speedsters. They're sideline guys. They rack up a lot of tackles. Ogbong Bamiga. I'm trying to just say it every time because I want to be respectful, but it is hard to say it every time.
Sure.
Ogbong Bamiga. I'm getting better though, right?
I was going to say the more reps, dude. Reps.
Reps. Yeah, right. Ogbong Bamiga. I'm feeling like a lot more confident saying it.
You're Ogbong Bamiga.
Thank you. Ogbong Bamiga finished with like 82 tackles in the shortened season. He was second on the team behind just one tackle behind leading the team in tackles. Finished as a first team academic all Big 12. I know people don't like to talk about academics in football, but it's important to be smart, especially when you play the linebacker position, because you have to know what every person on your defense does when you're a linebacker, or if you're going to be a team captain, which, guess what? He was a team captain voted by his teammates. He was the Lot Impact Trophy finalist and second team all Big 12. So the guy had all the stuff that you need as a collegiate player to get drafted. He has the size, he had the speed, he had the tackles and the measurables. So I'm shocked he didn't get tackled. But hey, the Chargers just get richer with this undrafted guy who I think is a huge potential for them. And I know with Brandon Staley's defense and running a 3-4 scheme and with the guys they already have, as you mentioned, Drew Tranquil and Kenneth Murray and Kaiser White, who's very versatile, it's going to be tough for him to make this unit and crack this starting roster. But when you see what he did at Oklahoma State and you see the intangibles that he has, he's a guy I'd be fired up about, and he's 100% going to be on an NFL roster. Hopefully it's with the Chargers, because I think just he has a lot to bring to the table and will be a guy, a leader, and someone that we could see, whether it's with the Chargers or not, 2 years from now, being a starter for one of these teams and making a name for ourselves like Corey Littleton did with the Rams.
Yep. Wouldn't be surprised in here about 4 or 5 years we see a big payday for this young man.
Yeah. So, well, there you go. So those are the 4 guys for the Chargers who we have best. I think, did we agree on every guy? Do we have anyone different?
Yeah. I don't think we differed on any of them, to be honest with you.
Oh, no. You're I had Ben DeLuca and you had
Yeah. And then I had Darius. Or no, the other
Darius we agreed on. You're the defensive lineman from your hometown.
Right. Foster Merrill, yeah.
Foster Merrill, yeah. So, best of luck to these kids. Can't wait to watch them in training camp. It's always fun to see these undrafted guys go out there and compete. And what's great about the Rams and Chargers is they definitely play with the mentality that they don't favor high-end draft picks. Especially Brandon Staley. We saw that on defense last year with the Rams. Is he doesn't care when you were drafted or not. If you can play and you can compete and you work your ass off, you have a shot to make the squad. And we've seen other coaches, unfortunately, specifically Anthony Lynn and his regime before, that there was some onus or respect, if you will, to your draft position, and guys didn't get as much opportunity. So I think we'll see a change in that for the Chargers now with Staley in town. So a lot of these guys have a really good opportunity to make the squad and make a name for themselves in the NFL. So, Coach, obviously that took longer than we anticipated because, it's us talking football.
Right.
The plan was about 40 minutes. We went 51. So not horribly over.
We've done much worse.
Yeah, much worse. So, but to wrap up the show, I want to talk some college football. We'll talk some USC and UCLA. But to get into that, we have to talk about what's going on in the college football landscape. And that is the announcement officially this morning, Oklahoma and Texas announcing they are leaving the Big 12 and going to the SEC. Quickly, let me ask you first, what's just your thoughts on that? I mean, you're a Kansas guy, you're a Big 12 guy. What's your thoughts on that?
Horns down. That's what whatever the Sooner. I don't know the
Boomer Sooner.
Yeah, whatever the disrespectful one for the Oklahoma. I got to tell you, I get it. College football is completely different than what it once was. It's never going to be the same. And it's all about money, and the SEC is where the money's at. So I get Texas and Oklahoma with their traditions, emphasis on tradition. Well, Oklahoma's been good. They've made playoffs, but Texas is, I feel, I don't want to go off on this big personal tangent, but man, growing up in Missouri, Colorado, but I hate the fact that the Big 12 is not going to be the Big 12 anymore. And I know that, we've brought in TCU and West Virginia and we lost Nebraska. There's been changes. And it was the Big 6 and the Big 8 and then, Big 12. Man, I miss the old days. I really do. And the fact that it doesn't look like the Big 12 is going to, if they do bring in other schools, it's just not going to be what it once was. It's just not. It's not going to. They don't have the Big 10 schools. They don't have they don't have that premier football school anymore. Texas, Oklahoma leaves. There's no more football program in the Big 12. Iowa State's the best one you got, and Baylor's had moments.
Which how weird does that sound?
Right? It sounds very weird. You look at schools like KU and Kansas State and Oklahoma State, and those schools are not premier football schools. But basketball wise, I think there's plenty of conferences out there that might look at, Big 12 schools. Baylor's a defending national champion. KU is one of the premier blue bloods around. K-State puts together a team every 6 years. Iowa State's put together some teams. It's a good basketball conference, but in football, that's where it's going to hurt them. So I think, honestly, I don't know if they're just going to kind of shotgun everybody out and there's going to be, no more Big 12. You're just going to have these 4 power conferences, or if they're going to try to bring in teams like Cincinnati, bring in a team like BYU, bring in a team like Memphis. I don't know what direction they're going to go, but the fan in me hopes that the core, KU, Kansas State, Iowa State, Baylor, I hope those teams stick together, and I hope they expand rather than, just disband and their teams are left to find other conferences. I hope the Big 12 sticks around just for the fan in me.
That's what I'm most curious on. And before I even touch on Texas and OU joining the SEC is, will the Big 12 be able to survive and add new teams, or will the other conferences try to come in and pluck the remaining good teams left? Like, will the Pac-12 come in and say, I know that's geographically doesn't make sense, but nowadays none of it makes sense.
No.
Or does the Big 10 try to pluck more teams? And so I don't know where the Big 12, I don't see who they could add to remain a Power 5 conference in football. Like you said, basketball still has some power teams, but in football, I mean, what they're at now? They're down to 8 now with Texas and OU leading.
Yeah. They were still the Big 12. Yeah, they only had 10, but now they're down to 8. Yeah,
now they're down to 8. So obviously they would need to add, at least 2 to, I guess, be respectable, even though they go by the Big 12. Whatever, that's a different conversation. But
right. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's crazy that Texas and OU were willing to pay money to get out of their TV deals to join the SEC, and the Big 12 offered them a bigger piece of the pie to stay, and they still thought the opportunity was better to join the SEC, which shows you what the SEC is doing. Mm. Now, on a football level, because we're not going to spend too much time on this, it's not our direction of the show, the SEC or Big 12, but on a football level, does Texas and OU get absolutely destroyed by the SEC, or do you think they'll actually compete?
So the way I've seen them potential break it down is, their division would be A&M and then Missouri, which is like, well, that's the old Big 12. Yeah. So why you whatever? But so I think they're going to be able to compete. I think they'll always be that B+ tier. They'll be the teams that Alabama, Georgia, LSU at times, and possibly Florida. I think those are the teams that they're going to come in and beat Oklahoma and Texas every single year. It's not going to be that hard to, but it's also going to look good on a resume for the College Football Playoff Committee. When Alabama can say they beat Texas, or they beat Oklahoma, or they beat both, and they got 2 losses to Georgia and Auburn, they're still making it in because they beat Oklahoma and Texas, and some other school have beaten a bunch of nobodies. I think that they're resume builders, man. Texas and Oklahoma are good programs, but Oklahoma in the SEC, when they've made the playoff as a Big 12 team, are not Big 12, or they're not playoff teams in the SEC. They get beat 2 or 3 times, and I think that's all that's going to happen. I don't think recruiting's all of a sudden they're not going to get an influx of recruits because they're in the SEC. They're not. I don't know, man. It sucks for the Big 12 and for Texas and Oklahoma. I think they're doing a great thing for their programs, but I think when it comes down to it, they're hurting their own playoff chances. You're not going to go out and beat Alabama. You're not going to go out and beat Georgia. Like, those are some of the you're just not. You're not playing Kansas State, Kansas, and TCU every week now. You're playing the best football competition around. So for Texas and Oklahoma to think this is going to help them out, it's not. Like, I don't. For what reason is this going to boost you by playing better teams than you week in and week out when you were playing scrubs 9 out of the 10 weeks of the season? So I don't. Whatever. Like, good luck to them and good riddance, in my opinion. I've always hated Texas. I've had more respect for Oklahoma for whatever reason, but. Mm-hmm. Whatever. If they want to go join the SEC and get their asses kicked 4 times a year, then that's fine.
They must know, in my opinion, that the playoff is expanding.
Well, that's true. That's a good point. That's true.
They must know that because whoever wins the Big 12 has basically been a shoo-in for the playoff. Like, the Pac-12 has been, the conference has been kind of screwed, that whoever wins the Pac-12 is not a guarantee to get in.
Sure.
The Big 12 seems like every year the Big 12 winner gets in. So they must know, because it's been those 2 schools. Oklahoma and Texas are always the 2 teams that are not really even Texas, but Oklahoma has always been the team that wins the Big 12 of the past, basically since the playoff was incepted. Mm-hmm. So they must know the playoff is expanding. And so they're thinking, obviously the money-wise, we can expend our revenue dollars, the SEC. I know Texas has their own network, but they can probably bring their own network to the SEC. I'm sure they can divorce the Big 12 in that regard, because it's literally the Longhorn network. So I'm sure that won't hurt them too bad. And then the OU can probably get a lot more out of SEC money, TV deals in the Big 12. So money wise, obviously it probably does make sense for them because of what the SEC has been doing. But football wise, unless the playoff is expanding, which they must think it's going to and must know, it makes 0 sense, because even if they are compatible, or even if they compete at the level which they've been competing in the Big 12, they're still not Alabama. They're still not LSU on a good year.
Yeah.
They're still not Georgia. They're like right underneath those three, probably. Texas is even lower. Texas probably isn't even on like Ole Miss's level or, others. Florida's level. I'm showing disrespect to Florida. They've been good for many, many years. But OU at least is in that probably top 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But if you finish fourth in the SEC, you're not.
Stuff, yeah.
Yeah, but if you're fourth in the SEC, you're not making the playoff. So they must know this is expanding to like a 16 or 18 team playoff. They must know
that's a good point. I didn't necessarily think of that.
Maybe that's a spoiler. Maybe that's something we should be excited about.
Maybe. I mean, it is, but it isn't good. And I think if that does happen, if they expand, here's something I think would be smart. Because what would that give the SEC? Would that give them like 16 teams?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. 16. Yeah,
okay.
They would be at. They're going to be at 16 with OU and Texas.
So Pac-12 has 12.
Yep.
Big 12 has 8. That's 20. That's a huge ass conference. But who's to say Pac-12, Big 12 shouldn't merge? And you split into West and East. You have 2 10-team divisions or 2, whatever you want to call it. I don't know how the back behind the scenes crap works with that alignment and divisions and all that. But how fun would it be? And I know we're talking football, but how fun would it be to see UCLA and Kansas play twice a year in basketball? How fun would it be to see USC take on like an Iowa State, who we've at one point said Matt Campbell might take the USC job, or he should be a candidate that they look at, whatever. That would be I think that'd be a fun matchup to see Iowa State versus USC. It's an interesting matchup. And then you get to see like old school Big 12 rivalries like Colorado and Texas Tech or Kansas and Nebraska, or there's I think that's somewhat of a fun idea to think about those pairings and Oregon against Baylor. They're just things you don't ever see, but all of a sudden now they're conference rivals, and I think that's something that would help Pac-12 because now you have a completely new audience. You're gaining all these states that want to see Kansas, they want to see Kansas State, they want to see Oklahoma State, they want to see TCU, but now you're getting publicity to a whole new audience. You're not West Coast anymore. Now you're getting Midwest time zones as well. So I think that would help both conferences, not only for football, but basketball, baseball, softball, all the sports you're going to talk about. But I think that's an interesting idea to try to compete with, because I've seen, Iowa State and Kansas have been linked to the Big Ten and TCU and Kansas State linked to like Mountain West and stuff like that. But I think that would be a fun little idea to see a super conference compete with the SEC and let's see what happens. Pac-12, Big 12, I don't know what you'd call it, but that'd be pretty cool.
No, that's a great point. And there was reports too that the SEC has their eyes on a 20-team conference, saying they've contacted Ohio State, contacted Michigan.
That's not even fun. That's not even fun.
I don't get it. Basically making like a super league like the billionaires are trying to make for soccer over in Europe. And they're going to enrage fans, I'm sure, and whatnot. But yeah, the Pac-12, it's okay. So let's turn this now to the Pac-12. And you mentioned combining forces with the Pac-12 and the Big 12 and making a Pac-20 or whatever we would call it at that point. Right. Which would be very interesting. And then you would essentially have a Power 4. You wouldn't have the Power 5 anymore.
Right. And
I think you would legitimize a lot of these Pac-12 schools that we know are very good because we cover often and we talk about often. But the college football gods or whatever in media never talk about, but they're being forced to if it's a 20-team conference. So I think it could be good for some of these teams. Would be interesting would be the alignment, obviously. But it'd be a lot of fun, seeing, like you mentioned, some of the matchups you'd see in Ohio State, their rising power, Iowa being obviously a very good school as of late and a powerhouse when it comes to offensive line and tight ends and seeing how they can compete against USC and UCLA. So it's an interesting thought. It's one that should be explored, especially because the Pac-12 of all 5 conferences, maybe not as much as the Big 12 now because of what just happened, but before that was the conference hurting most for money deals and revenue and the most irrelevant. Like let's be honest, without USC lately, the Pac-12, and I know Oregon's been phenomenal, Washington has been phenomenal, but without USC, there's really no national excitement about the Pac-12. I think it's bullshit because I think the Pac-12 actually is really good football. They just no one covers it on the East Coast where ESPN is and all that. Pac-12 is good football, but without USC, there's no excitement. And so if you add schools like Baylor and Texas Tech and so TCU and like you mentioned the other schools, Iowa State, it could add some fun to it. So let me ask you this: if that full 8-team alignment didn't happen, and the Pac-12, so the SEC is at 16 teams, and the Pac-12 went to 14 or 16, so added 2 or 4 teams. Who are 2 to 4 teams you think would be great fits in the Pac-12 that would maybe be good for actual, like, make sense geographically, be good for TV money, be good for recruiting? Who are just some 4 teams you think might be a good fit?
So BYU is a program that obviously is coming off of the Zach Wilson season, and they were dominating teams, and now the level of competition was not where it should have been. But BYU is a school that possibly would be a good fit that would up and they put together. I feel like every March Madness tournament, BYU has a squad that like is on a upsetting someone else or going 2 rounds deep. So I think football and basketball wise would be great.
And the not to cut you off, and the
Sure.
Pac-12, like at least someone in the Pac-12 plays them like every year. Like USC plays them, like they play them every year, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and they're right there in Utah. They're big rivals with Utah, so I think that'd be a great fit. Boise State is another kind of team that's always kind of been that fringe. Should they be Power 5? Should they stay where they are? I think Boise State's another team that they should consider. And then I'm gonna be a homer. I'm gonna say Kansas and Iowa State. I love those 2 programs. Obviously Kansas, but I think more so for basketball to see Kansas play UCLA and to play Arizona. There's some old school rivalries between UA and KU, and then I think Arizona State versus Iowa State would be a good matchup. I think both how they run their offenses are just completely different, but I think I don't know. I just think there's so many fun matchups in the Pac-12 for whatever reason. And then Iowa State, KU, I like Boise State, and I like BYU. I think those would be a really interesting expansion teams.
Yeah. I don't disagree with any of those. The 2, if we're expanding from Pac-12 to Pac-14, the 2 no-brainers for me, based on success rate, based on locality, based on viewership, would be Boise State and San Diego State. Who's actually, been fairly solid in recent years. They've beat UCLA twice in the past 3 years. So, and they've had some decent prospects come out, specifically at running back. Shout out Marshall Faulk, Hall of Famer for the Rams. But I think those 2 could make sense. The question is, do you want to add teams based on success in lesser conferences and geographically, or do you want to add teams based on name recognition and like TV money? Sure. I don't think Boise State or San Diego State brings you any more revenue when it comes to TV deals. I think they make sense. I think they're good competition. I think they're better football schools than maybe nationally given credit for. But a Boise State Oregon State game, is that going to bring you any more money than what previously was going on? Is a San Diego State USC game bringing you any more money going on? Probably not. So they make sense on football wise, and as a football fan, to me, I'm like, it makes total sense adding those 2. But on a monetary standpoint, which is what the NCAA is, I agree with you. A KU, who is, let's be real, an awful football school lately, but they're a great basketball school.
Thank you for saying lately. It's been a long time.
Very respectful here
as a fan. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm just remembering the Chris Harris Aqib Talib days. They weren't even that good then, but at least they produced some good prospects.
They won an Orange Bowl.
There you go. Yeah, that's right. But a school like that brings some like pizzazz, if you will. And obviously on basketball, that's a huge addition.
Basketball
to that
is
division.
KU saving grace in this whole expansion thing. If
huge
it wasn't
division.
For that, KU would be playing the Conference USA.
Yeah, but I think if KU joined like a Pac-12, they could maybe turn their football program around. Obviously, with more than me, their new hire and stuff in football. Hopefully, they're going to trend that direction anyway. Go ahead. I feel like you want to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to give a shout out to the current staff at KU. I think they've, the Les Miles hire I was excited about just because it's Les Miles, but obviously that was a train wreck and a half. And with the AD Long and all that. But yeah, Coach Leipold from Buffalo. Shout out to Coach Scooney, the special teams coordinator. He's an old family friend of ours. He played high school football with my brother, so and his sister was in my class. We know their family very well. So I love that he's on staff. They have a great wide receiver coach. Emmett Jones is a great. They have so many good coaches on staff that if they are going to turn it around, this is the staff to do it.
There you go. Yeah, and maybe they do it in the Pac-12. Who knows?
Maybe they do it in the Pac-12.
So, okay, let's wrap it up with this. So, with Texas and OU jumping ship to the SEC, there's always been the argument, not really even an argument, but the discussion, is the SEC the best football conference? And I really don't think it's much of a discussion. I think everyone agrees. Yes, it is. I think there's points to be made that stuff gets overblown and overrated to an extent. And when you look at other conferences, they get devalued in a sense. But overall, the SEC, I don't think anyone would argue, is not the best college football conference.
Sure.
So with them joining now, what can the Pac-12 do this year with the 12 teams they have? Because I don't think anyone's joining the Pac-12, and it's shocking that the Texas and OU made this announcement, a month before the season started. That's the other thing. I have no idea if they're going to play. Are they still playing a Big 12 conference this season, and this will take an effect? Like, I have no idea. Do you know what
So their current, like, I forget what it's called, like their media contract or their team, whatever. It's through 2025 technically, and they've said that they're not going to renew that once it expires.
Yeah.
But now that they've come out and said, we're leaving, I can see it happening sooner rather than later, and they're just going to null and void the contract. The Big 12, for me, the Big 12 at this point just needs to say, okay, bye. They've already, for them to come out and say, oh, well, hang on, we'll stick around, we'll give you a bigger piece of the pie. That was such a black eye for them. It's so embarrassing for the Big 12 to do that, but yeah, whatever. At this point, they did. Yeah, I don't know exactly the legality of it and how long they're actually, but yeah, beyond 2021, I think that 2021, everything stays the same. I think it's too short notice to change anything, but beyond that, I think it's probably up for grabs. And
so that was my big one. I think honestly, from what I've heard, that they would, starting in 2022, they would be like SEC. So I just didn't know for this season. So this season, they'll be still Big 12 and whatnot. So for the Pac-12, 14 playoffs still. Mm-hmm. We're a month or so away from the season. Me and you talked about it, I think about a month ago, that we both think USC and UCLA has a really good shot at winning the Pac-12 South. Mm-hmm. So what do you think needs to happen, that being said, for a Pac-12 team to make the playoffs?
They need to go undefeated. One team needs to go undefeated and win the conference outright, whether it be Oregon, Washington in the north, or USC in the south. I think those three programs are the best options to do it, and I think they're the most likely to do it if someone does it. But if they, each beat each other one time and everybody has a 1-loss record and their Pac-12 champion has maybe even 1 or 2-loss record, they're not getting in. And Pac-12 teams needs to go undefeated, and they need to have a lot of very convincing wins to do that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's what the Pac-12 does every year, is they all beat each other up, and that's why they kind of screw themselves on getting in. So I agree with you. I think maybe a one-loss team can make it in if they have a lot of convincing wins and they win, obviously, the Pac-12 championship. If that loss was to the second best team in the conference, very close, or even a out-of-conference team that was like if UCLA loses to LSU and then goes on and wins the Pac-12 championship, and that's their only loss, LSU, they might have a shot to make the Pac-12 championship, maybe. But
maybe it depends on what everybody else does, man.
Totally.
I could see a 1-loss UCLA getting snubbed for a 2-loss Georgia. I really could. I think
100%. 100%. And that's what I hate about this committee and this 14 playoff, because as we said, the SEC is the best college football conference, but there is discussion and there is some overratedness in the sense that the bottom of the SEC is not that good. Mm-hmm. The top teams beat up on all this, whereas the Pac-12 beats up on each other. And whether you say that's because they're not as good or it's just an overall better I don't know. That's another discussion, another podcast, another one we can talk about probably for hours. But I think I'm in agreement with you that, I think a Pac-12 team, hopefully it's USC or UCLA, needs to go undefeated to make the playoff.
Yeah. I think that's the only way, unfortunately. And again, it depends on what everybody else does. I mean, if the Big Ten champion has 3 losses and maybe, but I don't know. It just, it's unfortunate, but they gotta go week 1 to week 12 or undefeated.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll see, but we're looking forward to that. We will have all the coverage for you right here on the LA Football Network, the LA Football Podcast, for when the Bruins and Trojans take the field. Pac-12 Media Day is about a day away or so. So we'll have a lot of excitement around that. The coach, my man, thank you for jumping on with me and tell your wife I said thank you for allowing me some time.
Of course. And thanks for having me on. I always enjoy those text messages asking me to hop on. I love it, man. I look forward to it every time. And tell your wife, thank you for allowing me to steal some of her time.
I will do that. And thank all of you for stealing some time away to listen to us on the LA Football Podcast. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen. We are everywhere you listen to podcasts: Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Google Play. We're on Amazon Music now. Make sure to subscribe. And if you want to watch these ugly mugs talk about football, go to YouTube at LAFB Network is the channel. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell in the corner so you get notified. We got lots of stuff coming as training camp is launching just 24 hours from the time of this taping. So thank you all. Coach, appreciate you. Love you, brother. Hope you have a great rest of your evening and can't wait to get you fired up about Big 12 football again here soon.
I appreciate that, man. Love you too. And I hope you have a good night as well.
All right, man. We'll talk soon. Thank you all for tuning in. This is the LA Football Podcast. We'll talk to you all here in a couple days.